Hello and welcome to the Dedicated Show. This is Kate Strachnyi, the host of the Dedicated Show and founder of Dedicated. Today we are talking about understanding AI because, we're going to get through that in a half an hour. We're going to explain everything you need to know about AI. And I have a special guest who I will bring up on stage in just a minute, Eric Kavanagh. He is the host of DM Radio and he is going to answer all of the questions that come in. So if you're joining us live, make sure you use the chat either on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or X or Twitter, whatever you want to call that. And just type in your questions or comments into the comment section, and we'll try to go through as many of those as possible. Now, Eric is the host of DM Radio, Insight Analysis, and Future Proof. A long time ago, he helped evangelize the need for transparency in federal spending, inspiring an act of Congress. And we'll bring him on in just a second. As you're joining us, let us know where you're tuning in from and also answer this question. Do you believe, and this is just, you could be delusional if you'd like, do you believe that you actually understand AI? It's a yes or no question, so let us know. All right, I'm going to bring Eric up on our stage here. Eric, welcome to the Dedicated Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. How's it going? Thanks for the intro.
I already told Eric I'm buying the same microphone he has. I'm hopefully going to sound the same as you once I do that.
You don't want to sound exactly the same. That might be a little strange. People will be like, what?
Maybe. So Eric, again, welcome to the show. I've asked the audience to type in the comments if they actually believe that they understand AI or not. Before we get into that, I do want to give you a chance to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and also tell us what your typical day looks like. You wake up in the morning or in the afternoon, to each their own. What happens next?
I wake up in the morning, I help my wife do her various things, and then I hop on email and start seeing what's going on in the world. I check all the various news sites that I go to see if any other countries have blown up. And then I check my schedule and I get some coffee. And then in the wintertime here, I build a fire because it's very cold. It's very cold in Pittsburgh area. I don't like the cold. And so then I get into meetings and I start doing work and I realize all the things I have to write and all the things I have to do. I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. You walk around with this whole like litany, the to-do list in your head, right? It's like, okay, I got to do this, that, like start checking things off the box. One thing I learned a long time ago is that when you're self-employed, the whole week inverts. Right? When you're employed like a normal person, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 kind of thing, Friday comes around, you're like, yay. When you're self-employed, Friday comes around, you're like, holy crap, did I do enough this week? Am I going to be able to pay my bills? So, yeah, that's
I actually look forward to Mondays. I'm not sure why. I think I love my work so much and I find so much fun in it that I love the weekends and the family time, but I actually look forward to the Monday because that's when everyone else is going to be at work and responding, because I wouldn't mind working 7 days a week simply because I don't work that much. I don't have a 9 to 5. It's more of a maybe an hour or two per day.
Can I tell you that is so awesome? And that is, I'll give you one of my favorite mantras, right? Happiness is the ultimate metric. If you're happy, things are fine. If you're unhappy, there's a problem and you have to address it. And you can kind of see that in business too. If things aren't going well, you're not very happy, right? If you're happy at work, things are probably going pretty well. But the fact that you enjoy what you do is a critical success factor. And it's going to be even more important in the future because AI can handle a lot of stuff. It can do a lot of things for us, a lot of things that we didn't think it could do a few years ago. It can now do quite ably. And so we're going to have to enjoy what we do, or we're not going to have jobs, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be sort of shocked when, let's say, AI does take their job, or if there is some sort of universal basic income thing that gets implemented, which I do predict will happen for a period of time, maybe 3-4 years while they test it and experiment. People are going to be bored. I think they all want this free time, but a lot of us don't really know what to do with it. We want to pursue our hobbies that we don't really have, or our passions that we don't really know what it is. So it's important to start incorporating, I think, that into your schedule as much as possible while you still have a job. So it's not a shock.
Well, you have to keep busy, and this was a big Montessori theory that the human being's natural state is working. People like to feel productive, but that's the key, right? Is you want to feel like you're getting somewhere. And if you want to know where morale goes south, it's when people feel like they're not getting anywhere. They're not being listened to. Their issues aren't being addressed. Their job is boring or tedious. I mean, one of the nice things about machine learning and AI in general is it's excellent at tackling very tedious tasks. It's very good, for example, at going through 10,000 documents to find these 17 that have problems. Well, doing that by hand, you might as well jump off a cliff, man. It's over.
You know what's funny? Jump off a cliff. Because yesterday I had what's his name? Mike Ferguson on the show.
Oh, I love Mike Ferguson. He's one of my favorite people. He's awesome. He's so
Yeah, he's
smart.
awesome. And he made two references to potentially killing himself. One was jumping out the window, and one was something about hanging himself. Now we're jumping off a cliff. This is
Well, you gave me a great opportunity to tell one of my absolute favorite stories, which is when I was in New York in the year 2000 working for a .com run by Russians, which is where I picked up my Russian accent.
let's hear
And
the accent
and,
there.
and Nikolai Menchikov, so there are two Russian accents. There's a good guy and the bad guy. Nikolai is a good guy. Nikolai Menchikov is a very smart guy. Nikolai ran first ever advertising agency in Moscow in 1990s. Okay. And he was a brilliant guy. We walk into our office in the Empire State Building, 44th, I think it's 44th floor, which is great because it's like halfway up. So you're taller than all the buildings around you, but you're not so high that people down there are like little ants, right? So it's this
Right.
beautiful view. And I showed him, like, look, Nikolai, you can open the windows and like look out. And I'm like, it's kind of scary. And he goes, no, this is good. We have exit strategy.
Oh my God.
It's like, that's pretty dark, dude. What are you talking about?
Well, a lot of those windows when I worked at Deloitte, they didn't open. Like you could
Yeah.
not open your
Right.
windows.
Yeah,
I
they
think that
fixed that problem. It was awesome, though. I'm like, look at this. You can open the window and look all the way down with the
things
exit
are a little
strategy.
scary. But
He also he said all kind of clever things. He would say one day, he's like, the funny thing about the web is that nobody know how it works. All we know is it works. Right.
yeah,
And what's funny is we're just now, this is 20 years ago, we're just now, thanks to observability, for example, we're just now starting to be able to really figure out how this stuff works. Because a lot of people, like you talk about which port it goes through and all this crazy stuff, it's like, it's pretty darn complex how the internet actually works. I mean, you think you know how it works, but do you really?
I don't really. I will admit to that. And I think just like we can transition the conversation now over to understanding AI, right? Because my one of my first questions to you is, should we even try to understand AI? There was a quote from Pat Gelsinger, the CEO of Intel, that I heard recently, where he was up on stage talking about AI and how we need to use more AI. We're going to use more AI. That it's coming. But he compared it to the weather app, where we're using it, but almost none of us understand exactly how it's built, how it works. We're not trying to build a weather app, just like most of us are probably not going to try to understand AI. So you proposed a talk topic of understanding AI. This is
Yeah.
so I want to understand your thinking of who do you think actually has to understand it and why.
Well, and so, the concept of a black box, for example, is
Mhm.
something that we need to take a hard look at. And the future of open source kind of comes into play here. And I do think we need to try to understand how AI works. And there's some very interesting approaches. There's a company out of Canada, I think Darwin AI, who I had on the show probably 5, 6 years ago. And their whole business model is coming up with a deep learning module that will deconstruct and tell you how your AI is working. So
Mhm.
your black box, they will do an assessment and they look for various facets of video, for example, to figure out what works and what doesn't. And they'll help you kind of get explainability out of a black box AI engine. Now
Yeah.
it's hard to do, obviously, but if we don't understand anything about how it's working, and that's one of the challenges with like ChatGPT and these models, which are black boxes right now. I mean, Llama 2, I guess, is open source, but ChatGPT is closed source now. It's a black box. So how does it work? Well, if you don't know at all how it works, then you're going to have a real hard time governing this. And if it's touching things like mortgage loan applications or clinical care for patients and things of this nature, you kind of want to know like what's going on under the hood there, right? And what
Right.
I think is really fascinating is, and a lot of very smart people I know are telling me, all right, these are just systems of weightings. It's really not all that sophisticated scientifically. But, when I look at it and I realize you can ask it very detailed questions and get very good answers these days, especially about any subject that has been covered significantly in the media, right? Like how routers work or
Hmm.
how car engines work or things of this nature. If there's a lot of material upon which it's been trained, then it gets pretty darn good at showing you. But I'm fascinated by how this is going to disrupt analytics because all of the work that we've done over all these years, all the heavy lifting and data warehousing and moving data around and all this stuff, I think is partially out the window now. Not to go back to that analogy, but if you think about how these engines are able to get answers very quickly and create content that's compelling, like on a moment's notice,
Yeah.
that's all the executives ever really want. If I'm an executive, I want to know what to do next. I don't really care how we got there as long as the answer is accurate. And of course, that is an issue, and that gets back to explainability. So we
Yeah.
do need some explainability. I mean, personally, I think that our Congress, which doesn't seem to do too much good, needs to mandate that these big AI models are transparent, that there is transparency into how they work and what they do, because otherwise, I mean, think about it. If you were to cordon off this kind of capability and only give it to a handful of people, we already have a lot of imbalances in our society in terms of who has access to information and who can do things with it. Investment banks are leveraging the daylights out of this stuff, out of exhaust data, for example, all your credit card data. I mean, most people don't know that there are companies who know where you ate last night, how much money you paid, all this stuff,
Yeah.
because they're buying the exhaust data from the credit card companies. So I think explainability is very important. And I think it's going to take more than just wishful thinking. I think we're going to have to come up with all sorts of governance programs to get to the bottom of this stuff and to be able to describe how it came up with its answer. And that's an open question right now.
And do you think it's the government's responsibility to sort of say, hey, all of you companies, you need to disclose and be more transparent?
Well, if you look at past acts, like look at Sarbanes-Oxley,
Yeah.
which came out of all the shenanigans at Enron. And as a reminder to folks, it was really the traders, the energy traders, who were doing bad things, and some of the corporate executives. It wasn't the energy folks themselves. Actually, the people in energy business are really nice people. I've known a lot of them over the years. But if you look at what Sarbanes-Oxley did, it said, hey, you have got to show us how your processes work, how you come up with these numbers, all that kind of fun stuff. That's actually when I got all excited about the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act. I said, hey, if corporations have to show their numbers and how they get to it, why doesn't the government have to show that? So, I mean, you ask, is it the government's job? I mean, it kind of is, because the primary job of the government is to protect the people, right? That's
Yeah.
number one, is security, either from, tanks rolling in or from cyber attacks and companies taking advantage of us. So,
So what you're saying is we need some major shenanigans to get stuff moving in the government.
I think we're already seeing them. I think it's I think it's happening right now.
All right, Eric, thanks for that. Now, I know you're speaking at Data Universe,
Yeah.
and you have an interesting title. It actually definitely caught my attention. I made a post earlier today, actually. It's been a long day. It's only noon. It's really
That's
been a
right.
long day for me.
You're busy. Yeah.
Yes, I have been busy today. And I scrolled through the agenda for Data Universe, which is an event coming up at the North Javits Center in New York
Mhm.
City, April 10th to 11th,
That's right.
2024. And I'm like, okay, what are going to be the top 3 talks that are going to grab my attention based on title alone?
Right.
And yours was definitely one of them. And I think it, because it had the word death in it, but it was death to journalism. So I want you to tell the audience, what do you mean by death to journalism? What's happening here?
So traditional journalism is going to die a very painful death. It's happening already. I mean, we just saw Sports Illustrated implode. Sports Illustrated, like any man in America grew up with Sports Illustrated. It's one of the most popular magazines ever. It was incredibly popular. It was incredibly well read and respected, and it's gone. It didn't do so well. The LA Times just laid off 20%. I thought it was funny because I predicted this like months ago. I've been thinking about it for a long time. And now we're starting to see it. Newspapers are dying, trade press is dying, all these traditional approaches, in part because there's no way they can stand up and fight these large language models. So I think what's going to happen here, and this is what the talk will be about, is that large language models with sophisticated fine tuning and or RAG, this retrieval augmented generation protocol, are going to be attached to systems of record, think like the Federal Register for the government, or sales tax systems for a county, for example, or really any system of record that is publicly available. You're going to see these LLMs attached to those systems, and you're going to get dynamically generated information about what's actually happening. And one of the reasons this is happening is because news is really just opinion these days. It's become so politicized in America. It's just off the charts political. And I've been behind the scenes, so I've seen how the sausage is made. And the other side of the equation is you just can't keep up. So you think about what you could do now with Bard or ChatGPT. You can sit down and have a conversation with this engine and ask it all kinds of questions and get what are essentially dynamically generated, highly personalized news stories just for you and just for what you want to know. So you can say, and they're not there yet, but you'll be able, and think about like regulations and laws and policies that are very complex, very hard to read, very hard to understand. Like I was talking with Jim Harris the other day, and he was talking about this very topic. It's twitter.com/Jim Harris. Brilliant, brilliant guy.
Okay.
He was talking about how someone he knows was in a big hospital system in Canada, and they're like, "Oh, how do I fire this person? Because they're really not doing a good job." Well, hitherto, you would have to pore over manuals and know all kind of stuff that's very difficult to absorb and to understand. But now you can just feed all those policy documents into a large language model and then ask it questions. I want to fire this person. How do I do it? Step one, you have to enter a letter and tell them their performance is down. Step two, do this. Step three, do this. It's all right there for you.
It is.
So what was Byzantine and terribly complex, and I can promise you many people have been taking advantage of that. Think about all the lawyers, right? Like the guys at 1800 Pennsylvania Avenue. I did a webinar with someone who's worked with them. Morrison and Forster is their name. Okay. It's
Okay.
1800 Pennsylvania Avenue. They're like $1,000 an hour type attorneys who know really complex stuff. Well, now anyone who has access to these systems of record and these policies can load them into ChatGPT and get the answers themselves. So
Very
what you
quickly.
right,
That's
very quickly and very accurately, right? And I remember I saw in a magazine. I used to do webinars for this group called GARP, the Global Association of Risk Professionals, like the movie
Oh, I
where they're
used
going
to
to GARP.
work there. Yes.
I think I knew that. That's crazy.
Remember? Yeah, it was 2009
Yeah. So I
that I
was doing the
worked.
webinars when you
I
were
know all
there.
about GARP, man.
That's too funny. So in one of their magazines, there was an ad for Morrison Forster, and they branded around MoFo, which of course is short for mother effer. And
Oh,
I asked some guy, I was like, "Are they aware of like what that means?" And the guy said, "Oh, it's my understanding they are well aware of what that means." Right. So these guys, the point is, talk about leveling the playing field. All of a
yeah.
sudden, if you, as just rando person in the world, can understand what yesterday a lawyer could charge $1,000 an hour to provide, that's a pretty interesting dynamic.
Oh, absolutely. But I wanted to shift over to content creation, right? Because you mentioned that you can have your large language
Yeah.
model provide content specifically for you. Do you think, as humans, being human and enjoying human interaction, do you think that there's going to be some desire for that human connection and the human writing? Because I am seeing a lot of that stuff, let's say on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Just the comments are AI bots, the posts are AI
Right.
generated, and it's so obvious in almost
Right.
every case. It's like, hey,
Right.
data pros, blah 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 blah. I'm like, who? No one even talks like that. Like, we know what you're doing, man. It's
Right. I do. It is a concern, no doubt, that I have. I'm worried about Gen AI kind of dumbing down conversations, or even think about like when you're on your phone and LinkedIn, or for example, and it gives you three answers to say yes or no or oh hurrah or whatever. Like sooner or later that is going to start shepherding how conversations happen and kind of dumbing things down. So that does concern me. I think that these LLMs can do a great job, though, at getting key components of a story together for you. But
Mhm.
anyone who uses it, I would always recommend write your own leads, do your own analysis.
Yeah,
Don't just copy and paste from Chat GPT and act like it's your article, because it's not going to be very interesting. And
yeah.
to your point, it's going to be kind of formulaic. So I'm definitely concerned about short-term, long-term impact of this stuff. It's going to be strange.
You reminded me, there was a friend of mine who got a message on LinkedIn from just some creepy stranger, and he said some creepy stuff. And LinkedIn's recommendation was for her to write back, "Can we set up a meeting?" Like, that is like,
Like, no,
can
no.
you imagine that being like what they thought would be the go-to response in that situation? I'm
Right.
like, okay, well, that was great. So
Well, that and on LinkedIn and Twitter has this problem too. And LinkedIn, for some reason, it's Asian girls, all these Asian girls who want
I
to
don't get
connect
any
with
Asian
me.
girls from
Yeah,
me.
you probably get like, I don't know what you get, but you wouldn't get those. But I
I
get the
don't get
Asian.
many creeps. You know what? Because I talk about topics that those people just simply don't care about.
Good for you. You've like gone right over their radar. Like, I can't even deal with that. That's good. You've scared them off. Well
Yes,
done.
exactly. No, seriously, I've been so lucky to not get a lot of the stuff,
Yeah,
because I'm very focused on data analytics and AI, and I mean, only the people who really care about this could sit through
that's
30,
nice.
60 minutes of the content.
It's a self-selecting audience, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice.
So Eric, we haven't talked about DM radio yet, and I want you to tell the audience, what is this? I know there's a special, today's a special day. What is it? February 1st, 2024. Why is today special?
We turned 16 years old, baby. We can drive now. DM radio can officially drive. Yeah, I'm excited. It was 16 years ago in February of 2008 that we launched this show. And I'd actually pitched it when I was working at the Data Warehousing Institute, TDWI. They've changed what those letters mean now. But I
Yeah.
pitched it back there and it was shot down. I was like, well, I'm going to do it somewhere. So I left and hooked up with the people from Source Media, and they underwrote the program way back in 2007, and we first launched in February of 2008. We brought together several experts to talk about data. And, frankly, I knew that, first of all, you can't have a software company without smart people. It's just not possible. I mean, you
Right.
need smart people who understand a business problem, and you need smart people to code that stuff, to translate and to develop, and of course, sale and market and all that kind of fun stuff. So I knew, and I was very selfishly desiring to network, to get to know all the right people, to educate
Mhm.
myself, and to make some money. So I did all that through DM radio. And here we are 16 years later, a couple thousand shows later,
I
still talking about data.
I'm still so shocked that 16 years ago was just 2008. Like, that
I
doesn't add
know.
up to me.
It's
2008 was like 2
freaky.
years ago though. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure what you're doing wrong, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to write that down. I'm like, that can't be the right number.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, time has been
There's a
flying.
lost decade from 2000 to 2009, the aughts. I call that the lost decade because I think it was like 10 years ago. No, 20.
Yeah,
You're forgetting
I
about the
know.
aughts, like the
I
middle.
know. So what does DM stand for?
Data management.
Why did you decide to focus specifically on data management?
Well, specifically, there was a magazine back in the day called DM Review, and
Okay.
DM Review was the first major publication that was all about data. Sean Rogers and Ron Powell were the founders of DM Radio, as I recall. And yeah, they were the ones. Then that got bought by Source Media, and that's when I started working with those guys. And now, of course, it's gone. They changed it to information management, and then, if like 3 years ago, they stuck an ice pick in its neck, and it died, and
Oh man. So
it's
now
now
we've got
gone.
an ice pick. I need to be writing these down. We have
It's
a
like
theme on the dedicated show. So
it's like the Clue, the game Clue. Remember, it was in.
oh, I play that with my kids. I love that game. I'm
That
not
is a
very
fun
good.
game.
I'm just
Really,
I'm not. No,
that's
my
surprising.
7-year-old beats me consistently. She's just
Really.
yes. Absolutely.
Oh.
I don't know why. I just
Tell them when she turns 18, I want to hire her. That sounds good.
she is one of those super bright kids who like learn to read chapter books at age 5. So I'm not feeling too badly when she beats me, but
Wow,
still.
that's
Um
impressive.
Payush says,
S-
congratulations, 16
16
years.
years, baby. It's real. We're feeling it. It's exciting. And,
Yes.
it's so funny because I knew data was going to be huge back in '01 when I joined a consulting firm in Austin, Texas, Damon Consulting. I knew it was going to be big back then, and it's so much bigger than I thought. And then AI comes along, and guess what? AI needs to do a good job. Lots of data,
Yeah.
lots of quality data, curated data, trusted data. And I'll use one of my favorite expressions or examples here. Training AI models is a lot like raising kids, because you have to expose them only to things you want them to know and understand. And if, like I always joke, if you talk smack about your neighbor in front of your kid, then the neighbor comes over and like, Daddy said you talk too much or whatever. Like, whoa, no, don't tell
I've
them
always
that.
feared that moment because I remember my nieces or nephews would come over and tell me things, and I'm like, oh man, my kids were really small at that time. Like, are my kids gonna do this to me when they go
Yes.
somewhere?
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
They're very shy, so not yet.
Okay, well,
Hopefully,
that's
I don't
good.
know.
Like, hold on to that. Like, keep that shyness rolling.
But that's a good like talk title um for like a conference. You know how raising your LLM is just like raising your children, because it is a very good way to explain it.
Yeah. Well, because you can't untrain. Like, if your kid
Yeah,
learns
once you know,
bad
you know.
words,
That's
good luck getting that out of their head. It's too late, man. It's in there now. It's in the model. Like,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
embeddings. Like, that's so memories are embeddings, basically, or significant experiences that you have in your life. Those are embeddings. And they will affect you. They'll affect, whether it's a really good thing or a really bad thing or just some random thing that for some reason you can't forget. And this kind of gets us back to how the LLMs operate. And I think that's a very interesting question of how they choose what they choose
Hmm.
from the documentation that they have. I don't think that's very clear. And I think it's quite compelling because how do they come up with the stuff that they come up with? I don't know. It's a bit of a creative process. It's a generative process, right?
Yeah, and if for some reason you want to make them forget, like let's say you did talk about your neighbor
Right.
to your child, and now you're
Right.
like, please erase this from your head. Like, do not say this. And the child's like, yeah, I forgot. But did they really? No, it's gonna come up.
Yeah, well, there's a movie, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or what was it called? There's a
Oh,
movie with,
from before we went live, I'm not gonna know the answer to that one. That's
which is, uh, yeah, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is all about just that a
oh yeah.
doctor comes up with a way to make people forget things. So if you really want to forget about, the loved one you lost or whatever, you would go to this doctor and he would do a procedure and you would forget. It's a pretty good movie. It's pretty dense. It's pretty interesting. Jim Carrey's in it.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, it's worthy of a look because you don't want to go down that road. Like, you gotta remember what you remember and just deal with it. Don't try to make it go away. So yeah, you train those models, man. It's very hard to untrain a model. You got to start from scratch, and that is not going to be fun.
Yeah. And then speaking of these models, so we talked about black box. What are some steps that, let's say, organizations can take to try to make that black box at least a tiny bit more transparent, so you can like see my hand moving behind the box?
Hmm.
Not fully transparent, because I guess that might be a little bit difficult to explain every single bit and piece.
Right.
Maybe because not everybody would understand actually what you're trying to explain, because not everyone can understand all those very technical
Yeah,
things
right.
and codes.
Right.
And so
Well,
what's your advice? What can they do?
I think there's going to have to be very thoughtful processes around training models. And what are your embeddings? Basically, your embeddings are going to be your audit trail. So whatever you
Hmm.
feed into this model, you have to track what you fed into it, what was the source documentation, et cetera, where did it come from? Track all that, and obviously track what comes out on the other side. And curation. I mean, my good buddy Dr. Usama Fayyad, who I booked for a keynote 24 years ago in Chicago. He is now the inaugural executive director for the Institute for Experiential AI, is what they call it. It's part of Northeastern University. And when he says experiential, he means human in the loop. And he points
Hmm.
out that, in the media, this is another reason why journalism is going to die. I have an expression: the narrative is always wrong. Like, whatever is the narrative in the media, it's a story. That's not facts. It's like constellations. Like, I remember, like, when I learned about constellations, like, oh, look, that's a bow and arrow. I'm like, is it? Like, I just see
You
like a
say
couple.
so. I
Like,
see it too. You don't see
are
that?
you sure? Like, oh, is that Orion's belt? Okay, I got the belt. Maybe that's my belt. Like, I don't see the rest of what you're talking about. These are narratives that get spun in the media. I don't pick on any particular ones, but it's always wrong. And the narrative about AI is that, oh, a red-eyed robot, of course, but also you're just get your model and turn it on, it's going to run your business. No, it's not. No
Hmm.
AI model is ever going to run your whole business. Like, you need people in the loop all the
Absolutely.
time monitoring what it does, because if it goes off the rails and there's no one monitoring it, that's called a train wreck.
Yes, exactly. No, I don't see the human ever leaving the loop. I think, in fact, the more AI we use, the more we'll need the human to control the damn thing.
Right, to
Um,
shepherd it, basically, because it's like, I mean, it's like a surfboard sort of, or it's a vehicle, it's moving, and you have to keep your hands on the wheel.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I don't understand all the fascination with driving hands free. They show the commercials. The guy's like, "I'm so excited! I'm in my car. I'm driving hands free." Like, is that hard? Is it that hard to go like this? Come
But
on, man.
how else
Really?
are you going to be on your phone the whole time watching TikToks?
Watching, yeah, that's right. Or the guy who goes into the back seat of his van because he thinks that, it's like, dude, don't do that. Like,
Well,
hold
I think it
onto
was
the
at
wheel.
CES that I might have seen this. They have this new concept of a car now where the whole screen becomes like your phone screen or your laptop screen. The windshield basically
Right.
becomes a screen while your car is driving itself, and you
Yeah.
can turn it on and off and see, or make
Right.
it somewhat transparent to see the road and that. But
Yeah. Sounds dangerous.
oh no, yeah, the future is going to be interesting.
So my British business partner, he's now mostly retired, but he always says very clever things because he's British, right? And out of the blue one day, he just said, "You don't want to die by accident." It's like, good point, Robin. Good point.
We must be intentional. This is the third or fourth death row reference here. This is
I'll give you another good one. Ludwig Wittgenstein, in his Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, once wrote, this is 6.4311 in the Tractatus. He said, "Death is not an event in life. We do not live to experience death." Then he said, if we take eternity to mean not infinite temporal duration, but timelessness, then eternal life belongs to those in the present. Isn't that cool?
Are you reading this or just
No, I remember it.
seriously? Wow,
Yeah, yeah.
that's really good.
That's a good. It goes on to say that our 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 lives have no end in the way that our field of vision has no limits. In other words, like, you can't see what you can't see. You're
Yeah.
absorbing all this information that you can turn around, et cetera, and look around. But yeah, his point was that you'll never be aware of the fact that you're dead. And I remember I read that after
Mm.
having seen as a kid a movie, one of the best movies ever. Is called Breaker Morant. It's all about the Boer War. I was like 11 years old watching cable, and my parents were never around. We were latchkey kids, so I'm watching HBO. And there are two guys, they walk by all these dead bodies, and the one guy says to the other, "Funny thing about the dead, they don't know they're dead." Like that. And I was just like, bing, ding, my brain just starts like,
This is
and then,
explaining a lot.
and then 15, 16 years later, I'm in college and I read that. I'm like, oh my God, that's what they were talking about. That's it, Or
Yeah.
Parmenides is another good one. He said I thought when I was in college, I thought he was just kind of a smart aleck. But the older I get, I'm like, he's kind of onto something. He was around the same time of Aristotle, but
Okay.
he was kind of against those guys. He questioned them, and he said, "Look, you guys keep talking about the past and the future, and I've never seen it." And they're like, "The hell are you talking about?" And he goes, "All I've ever seen is today, and in fact, all I've ever seen is right now. It's always now." And I'm like, "That's pretty deep."
That is deep. Conversations like this make me really overthink a lot of things. And
Yeah. Well, we don't want to too much overthink, but it is interesting because a finite creature to absorb an infinite reality, well, that's going to take time, right? Because you're finite. And as a finite creature, you can't absorb everything all the time. So life is a journey of just sort of interacting with the universal, like the data
but
universe.
you said we can't see what we can't see, but guess what?
What?
AI can. It's all seeing, it's all
Ooh.
knowing, and it's going to be all creepy.
Yeah. Well, it is, because the other thing too is, like, think about all the laws that people break, like when they speed or they do things. I mean, think about taxes, like when AI, and this is starting already, QuickBooks is doing some of this stuff, some of the other tax companies are getting on it. Taxes should not be that freaking hard to do. It just shouldn't be that hard. You should be able to push the button and go, bzz, taxes are done. And you're starting to see that in QuickBooks and in places, because there's only so many establishments where you can spend your money. Restaurants, the
Mhm.
county clerk's office, these places. Well, we can tell when the transaction comes across where it was from, right? So you
Unless
should
you're
be able
using
to,
cash.
which, how many people use cash anymore? Not too much, but you're
My
right.
brother, he has no credit card. He's in
Your
his 40s.
he sounds interesting. I want to meet this guy.
He has that bad guy Russian accent. You need to,
I like
which
it.
we haven't heard, by the way. We only heard the good one. So
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if I can do the bad one today. I'll have to think about it. The bad guy like this. He talk like this. Bad guy.
sounds the
Rush.
same. I don't know. Sounds the same.
They are similar. They're both Russian, so you got to watch out for that.
We had a question here. Let's take it. How do you see AI is going to help clinical data?
How will AI help clinical data? Well, this kind of gets into my pitch deck, if you will, which is we're working on something. The human is the
Human, like a human?
right. Let's think Joe Pesci saying human, human,
Human,
human.
human. How
We're,
do you
we're
spell that?
only we're only human after all. UMIN. A human is a
UM.
digital twin, basically, for someone who comes on a website. So we know third-party cookies are going away. Meta is trying to tackle this with their metapixel concept. Other companies are trying to figure this out. Adobe, I'm sure, is doing some stuff in this space. But with third-party cookies going away, how are we going to know who's on our site and what they want? So our idea was, let's create a digital twin. So when someone shows up, a session ID, we tokenize that and say, okay, this token is now your ID is in the vault, but your token is who you are for all intents and purposes, and then track their behavior, et cetera. Well, in the clinical world, I mean, my wife deals with MS, and it's a real pain. But one of the big hindrances for research in that space is all this HIPAA stuff, all this privacy stuff that protects theoretically patient data. I think it's a I think people make more of a big deal out of that than he should. But the point is, with AI, you'll be able to look at MRIs, like tens of thousands of them, and find similarities between them, and then start to understand what's really going on. We're going to get to the bottom of all kind of stuff about why things are happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on the drug discovery, and that's fine. There are some drugs that do good things, but I think there's an overemphasis on solving the problem with external substances, which, by the way, your kidneys have to process. And my mother died at the age of 66, having taken every pill every doctor told her to take.
Oh my
She
goodness.
was on 18 medications when she died, and she was only 66 years old, so it was kind of a crapper.
Wow.
But in terms of clinical data, I mean, I think that is probably the richest environment for advancements with AI, because life science is really complex stuff. I mean, you need some deep learning to understand the intricacies of how the body reacts to certain substances and all that kind of fun stuff. So AI is
So
going to be amazing for helping in healthcare.
help break this down. Is the digital twin going to reduce some of the privacy security concerns of? I mean, is the digital twin
Ideally,
me, like, or is it
yes.
what is?
Ideally, because we'll protect your identity, your actual identity. Now, the theory is we'll be able to see MAC addresses and IP addresses and things of that nature, which will know, okay, this is probably the same person. It doesn't have to be, because it
Mhm.
could be your husband on your computer or your kid on your phone or whatever. You never know exactly who it is. But the idea is we're trying to be able to understand who generally is on your website and how you could better market to them.
Mhm.
What's interesting? We talked to one of the most prominent big data companies in the world, and we suggested this to him, and he basically said, "We don't care who's on our website. We don't care." I was like, "What?" He goes, "No, we already have half the clients, half the people. We already have them." And what I heard was a culture of failure, frankly, because he was
Hmm.
saying, "Yeah, it'll be a bunch of people from Senegal and Africa and other places, and that's not going to be our customer." I'm like, "All right, but I
I mean,
think
these days you can do so much by not only seeing who's on your website, but what did they click on? What did they look
right,
at? How
right,
long? And
right,
where did they click next? And all of that.
right,
And
yeah."
when did they
The
leave? The drop off.
customer journey, right? The whole customer journey thing. And I
Yeah.
think, I mean, this
Mhm.
also gets into a deeper issue about web data and tracking data and software as a service. I was going to do another talk. I never got around to it, but it was going to be about lies, damn lies, and SaaS statistics, because software as a service statistics are like, I mean, they're out to lunch. You look in my email marketing campaign, it says, oh, 322 people clicked on that. Did they? Are you sure? Or are those spam bots and different things? Because I don't think all those people clicked, right?
Yeah.
And I can tell when I send out a blast, it's like, oh, the blast went out and there's already, 175 clicks in like 1 second. Yeah, I think
I've
that's
had the
called a
same
spam
problem.
filter.
I haven't gotten to the bottom of it, but it would be like you've received 3,000 clicks in a few minutes. But then let's say it was a click to my website and I'm on Google Analytics on the real time who's on my site now, and there's like 15 people. And I'm
Right,
like,
right,
something is not adding
right,
up.
right. It's not even close.
Like, why
So,
lie to me? Just tell me the 15 people clicked it and I'll be
right.
fine. That's
Well, and it's, again, it's because they have different mechanisms of scoring and determining what is a click, right? Or because I'm quite sure that a lot of that stuff is firewalls, it's, spam
no.
filters, things of this nature that are checking to make sure. because you'll see like certain
Mm.
companies and I'll watch, okay, so XYZ Corporation was a big company, 19 people all clicked 5 links. I don't think so. I think that's, under the covers here in the
That's
system.
true.
But getting to the bottom of that is actually really important because otherwise your numbers are nonsense. If you're using nonsense numbers to drive your business behavior, that's not going to end well. So you have to look at conversions, and it's kind of interesting. There's a company, Datarama, that had some of the most sophisticated technology I've seen that got bought by Salesforce. But I was looking at what they were doing, and they would let you take all kinds of data from different sources and really build a model very easily to understand what's happening and why. And I
Hmm.
asked them about attribution. They go, "Oh, we don't do attribution." I'm like, "What? Like, what do you mean you don't do attribution?" Like, no, we don't do attribution. Like, they don't want to touch that. Like, no, we don't do it. Like, okay,
I wonder why. That's interesting.
because they don't want to be held accountable for saying they do attribution, basically.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense. By the way, I just realized we went 11 minutes over my promised time, but that
I know.
happens when you're having fun, Eric.
I
And
know.
as we wrap up, I always ask my guest, where can we go to learn more about DM Radio, about you? Where do we see you next? Where do we hear from you? Where do we follow you? Not in person, virtually,
Yeah, there you go. I'm in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. I don't know if it was named after William Gibson, but it might as well be. And William Gibson is the guy who said, "The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed." I
Oh,
love
I've
that
definitely
line.
seen that quote. Yeah.
Yeah, we use that in our TV show Future Proof. Yeah, hop online, dmradio.biz or insideanalysis.com. Hop onto YouTube, look up Future Proof, check your local listings. We've got our own time slot in Washington, D.C. now, in Silicon Valley, and Los Alamos, and Champaign-Urbana, and a bunch of places. So, and send me an email, info@dmradio.biz. I'd love to get you on the show. And we'll be doing a show later today, in fact, 3 o'clock Eastern, with Malcolm Hawker and Kevin Kline, not the actor, a guy from
Oh,
Solar Winds.
okay, nice. Awesome. I'm going to try to tune in. That's the time I get my kids, but I'll do my best to do both.
There you
Eric,
go.
thank you so much for being on the Dedicated show. I'm honored
Thank
to have
you.
you here. I know you had like your own media room at CES. Like I've got the big time radio show here in
Right? This has been
almost
the
a year.
most fun show I've ever done. So,
Thank you. Oh, I'm going to quote you on that one. I'm going to play that over and over
yes,
for
please do.
myself.
This is great, honestly. I mean, good for you. I just love your stuff. You're so fun. You're engaged like no one else on LinkedIn, and you always say clever things, and
Keep
I
going. Keep
love it.
going. I like
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
What
No,
else
you're
do
really good. I remember when you first started, I was like, "Who is this Kate Strachnell? She's pretty clever." And
That's it? You
I
ran
found
out
out
of
your name is
compliments?
Scary Nichivu Strachneva. Nichivu.
Nichio.
Хорошо. До
That's why you
свидания.
keep saying it's not scary. I literally just got that.
You just got it.
So for those who don't know, Strashny, my last name, means scary in
That's
Russian.
so funny. What
And
a
I
name
saw
to
you
have.
comment that on a few posts, and I'm like, he must be on something that day. So
No. I love the name. I'm like, I can't believe your name, because that was the one little Russian I learned. "Ничего страшного," but nothing.
yeah,
That's how Russians say, like, "What's going on? Hey, how's it going?" They don't say, "Oh, pretty good." They say, "Nothing scary,"
yeah,
right?
exactly.
You can see why. I mean, good God.
Well, Eric, thank you again so much. This has been great fun. We appreciate this.
До
All right.
свидания.
See everybody online. Stay dedicated, and we'll see you next week.